Hey Beth, so this has nothing to do with the book channel because it's about a cartoon, an indie cartoon, but it's a roller derby magical girl indie cartoon. So I think that's, no pun intended, within my wheelhouse. So, I did roller derby for a while. I never got far enough to go into games because it's not only physically demanding, but it's a full contact sport, and the hitting is not super comfortable for me. Junior leagues are much less intense, so if your kid wants to get into roller derby, it's not going to be nearly as dangerous, but for adults, yeah. But I just kind of wanted to comment on the roller derby aspects of this pilot because I know a little more about it. So I'm going to explain some basics and what I think this animated pilot gets right and wrong about roller derby. So first off, it's called Wheels and Roses. That's the name of their roller derby team, and they go to Rose Academy because Magical Girl. The main character's name is Sahara. I think that's supposed to be her real name, not her roller derby name. The pilot is like 5 minutes long, so it doesn't have time to get into extra fun stuff like roller derby names. So it has 5 members on a team, which is the minimum you can play per jam. It is an extremely physically demanding sport, so having 5 people on a team is insane. That isn't an inaccuracy, though. They're supposed to be underdogs. It's a sports show. So the main team only has 5 players, and their rival team only has 5 fully animated players, but that's more of a budgetary constraint. They say they have 12 full people on their team. The characters that they got right in the team composition, there's always a jammer, and the jammer has the star in their helmet. I don't love that you can't properly see the stars on the pigtailed one's helmet all the time, so it's not totally clear what her position is unless you're looking for it. The main character also has a star on her helmet that I wasn't clear if it was a star or just a helmet decoration at first because it is a flower, not a star. It's just kind of star shaped. That was a little confusing to me, especially because there's another character who has a heart on the front of her helmet, and there's no reason for me to think that the flower is more of a mark of someone being the jammer than the heart. The jammer is the one who scores points in a round. They are trying to get past all the other players and do laps around the track to earn points. There's also the pivot. That's the one with the stripe down their helmet. Both of the pivots in this were very visible. However, they never get to perform their duty as a pivot because, again, it's a 5-minute short. The pivot in a game is there to switch places with the jammer if the jammer is ever stuck behind some blockers. You do that by taking off the helmet covering that has the star on it. It's called the panty, and we're not allowed to giggle about it. You would take off your star panty as the jammer and hand it to your pivot, who can then put it on their own helmet over their pivot panty, and they become the jammer. So that never happens during the short, but that's what a pivot is for. Thing that is weird to me, though, is that the jammer on the blue team in this, her helmet and panty are built around her pigtails, like there's special pigtail holes in both of them for her, and I don't know how that's supposed to be helpful for taking it off and giving it to a pivot, which is the entire point of having it be a removable panty instead of just a standard helmet. I appreciate that everybody is wearing the proper gear. They all have helmets, knee pads, and elbow pads. There's some AI generated stuff that came up when I tried Googling this, and there was really inconsistent padding that bugged me. There's also someone with a helmet growth out of her back, but the inconsistent padding is a way bigger issue, obviously. They aren't wearing mouth guards, which you super duper need to do, but again, I assume that's animation and because it's awkward to have a bunch of characters talking clearly in mouth guards, or you're just used to animated normal mouths. I assume that they just did that for convenience sake. I'm gonna assume they're all wearing like really clear, sheer, see-through mouth guards the whole time. Another thing that's definitely just to make the animation easier is no one has their number on their jerseys. Some of them have numbers on their armbands, which you have to have them on your jersey and on your armbands so that the referee can always see which number player you are. It was weird to me, they only had 2 referees who were on the track with the players during the jams. A jam is a round in a roller derby game, which is also called a bout. It's weird that there were 2 referees and they were on the track following the players as they played. That's super weird. Normally they would be in the middle so they can see everything and not get in the way of this complete full contact sport. The reason that referees in hockey have to be on the ice is because there's no place for them to be close up to the players without being right in their space. In football, they're on the sidelines. In roller derby, they're in the middle of the track. Perfect viewing, not going to get run over, not impeding the flow of play at all. They show you a clip of when a period is done. Roller derby takes place in 2 periods, and the scoring is accurate. Very high score. It's a very high scoring sport, so having 85 points at the end of a round is perfectly reasonable. The fact that there aren't actually more points for the opposing team at the end of the first round shows a lot of hard work and tenacity from the underdog team. I've been to games where after the first period, it's like 125-11. The other players that don't have the star or the stripe on their helmets, those are blockers. Their job is to keep the jammer from getting past them so that they don't score points. I'm going to talk about actual errors in the game, and a lot of those errors I noticed are with the blockers, because most penalties happen when you're coming in contact with other players. One of the first things I noticed, the players aren't close enough together. Maybe it's just because it's a fantasy track, so it's massive, but the blockers are supposed to be pretty close to each other. And at the start of a jam, you might be a little more separate, but most of the time the blockers are going to be right on top of each other. And if they're not, that's actually against the rules. They're supposed to stay together in what's called a pack. There's also an obvious penalty. I don't know about other leagues, but I played in a Woofdada league. Don't worry if you don't know what that is. But you're not allowed to clothesline people. You're not allowed to use your arms or your elbows at any point for blocking. You're supposed to use your whole body or your torso. You mainly want to use your hips, butt, and shoulders. There was a shot of someone using their shoulder to direct a jammer. That's a good move. But there's a shot of some blockers just blatantly putting up their elbow to block a jammer. That is super not allowed. There's also a shot where a jammer has her arms forward in front of her when she's trying to weave between 2 blockers. You wouldn't normally want to do that. That's not necessarily an inaccuracy. It might just be poor technique on the character's part. But if your arms end up hitting other players, that's a penalty. So you want to keep them down by your sides at all times. It's much better to Naruto run than to get put in the penalty box so the other jammer can start scoring all the points. Blockers in this are also always facing the jammers when they come around the track. You don't really do that. What you want to do is have your back facing them. They have blockers bracing on each other. That's pretty good. Although my league, we tended to do triads, not these double things that they have, but you would not be facing someone who's coming at you if your whole point is to block them, because you're going to get hurt if you try to block them with like the front of your shoulders. You're probably going to end up falling on your back, which is bad. You aren't going to have the same stability as if you can plant yourself and just shove your whole shoulder and back at them, because you're allowed to shove your entire back at someone, but you're not exactly going to get a lot of success if you're trying to push forward with your boobs and your unprotected gut at someone who's trying to ram at you at full speed. It's not effective, it's not a stable position, so nobody does it. I don't know if it's against the rules, but it's definitely inaccurate. Okay, so I haven't addressed the track yet. If you've noticed in the shots, it's not a normal, realistic looking anything. That's because it's a giant dragon. I think a giant crystal dragon track is actually really cool, and one of the fun magical girl elements that could make this a fun little sports romp, unique from other sports shows. The tracks I always played on are flat because they're gym floors or roller skating floors. They're not permanent designated roller derby zones. Sometimes they are shaped in certain ways, like the sides will be more vertical and the ends will be more horizontal, and that helps you pick up speed. The first example I ever saw of that was in the Weird Wonderful World episode of Watcher, where the boys learn roller derby. It's also accurate that the teammates have different levels of femininity and masculinity and different body types. A lot of roller derby teams have those differences because roller derby has that rep for being more accepting. If you have a bigger body type like me, you might also really enjoy being a blocker, because if you plant yourself there, you're doing a really good job as a blocker. If you can really hunker down and not move, that's a great thing to be. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be a good jammer. It was just really helpful for me that I didn't have to try as hard as I do with most other team sports. So they don't bother bringing actual magic into the game until the second period, after the main character gives a pep talk. So the characters do spells to make their skates heavier and sink into the ground more so they can be better blockers. In real life, you would hunker your whole body down more, but that's why it's magic and not real life. Part of the plot is definitely that the main character doesn't have magic, but she can still play roller derby. So that's a fun thing, that the main character in a Magical Girl show is the one character who can't do magic. She does have a thing right before the second period where she takes out a tool and uses it to loosen her wheels by 2 turns. 2 turns is a lot, by the way. You usually do it a quarter turn at a time if you're going to adjust your speed. They say it's because it makes her faster, even though it's riskier. I'm gonna kind of explain that. So it doesn't inherently make you faster, I guess, like it does, but if you can't push yourself forward enough when they're that loose, then you're just kind of going all over. Like, have you ever tried to ride a bike when it's on its lowest tension setting? It can be like that. What it really does is affect your level of control. So if they're too tight, you can't necessarily move the way you want to because you don't have the same range of motion in all the ways that you need to move your feet when you're on the track. If you loosen them, then you have a lot more control. So yes, you might be able to go faster, but it's not an automatic, the looser your skates are, the faster you are. It's just the fastest way to explain it to the audience watching. There's also stuff they couldn't include just because it's a 5-minute episode or whatever, but that's some stuff I noticed. It seems like it's stuff that's really easy to correct if you just edit it or have more time to animate something, but those are the things I would change. I like the idea of a Magical Girl roller derby show because it's like roller derby, where that is a female dominated full contact sport. So I like the idea of taking something hyper feminine and putting it in the most female dominated full contact sport, so you have a real juxtaposition between the between the masculinity of something that's run by women and this hyper femininity of something else. That seems like it could be fun. I would also love if it got more kids into roller derby. It's just an indie project right now, but I don't know, check it out. Maybe support the project if you really like the short. That's my point of view on it. Okay, bye.